Christmas just doesn't work for our schedules, Mom. Don't wait up for us. And just like that, the 6th December 25th came and went without a call, a text, or a visit from any of my 3 children. 41 years of raising them, feeding them, sacrificing for them, and I had become nothing more than an inconvenience with a calendar. But the night of that 6th Christmas, something shifted in me, and by morning, 11 million strangers would know my name. My name is Eleanor. I am 71 years old, and I taught 4th grade for 33 years at Maple Creek Elementary School in Dayton, Ohio. I was the kind of teacher who kept a glass jar of peppermints on the corner of her desk and stayed after the bell rang until the last child understood the lesson, even when that meant my own dinner going cold on the stove at home. My husband Harold used to say, I gave away my best hours to other people's children and saved only the leftover light for my own family. He didn't mean it as criticism. He said it the way you say something you have observed so many times, it has simply become true. The way he always knew when rain was coming by the color the sky turned over the cornfield behind our house. Harold noticed things. Harold and I raised 3 children in the house on Birchwood Lane where I still live today. A green colonial with a wide front porch, black shutters, and a kitchen that always smelled like coffee and something baking. We bought it in 1981 for $87,000, which was nearly everything we had. And we paid it off in 19 years by being careful, by saying no to things we wanted so we could say yes to things we needed, by working with the focus of people who understand that what they are building will outlast the building of it. Patricia came first in 1978, then Daniel in 1981, then Thomas in 1984. My youngest, my late surprise, the one who arrived when I was certain we were done. I loved them the way only a woman who has wanted children her whole life knows how to love them. Without reservation, sometimes to the point of absurdity, the kind of love that follows you into the parking lot after a school play and weeps in the car because it is so full it has nowhere else to go. Harold worked construction for 30 years. He was not a man who talked about love in sentences, but he showed it in specific things. The way he carried Patricia to bed when she fell asleep on the couch, the bookshelf he built for Daniel's room over a long weekend, the pancake breakfasts he and Thomas had together every first Saturday of the month, just the 2 of them, father and son, until Thomas was old enough not to want to anymore. We were not wealthy, but we were never empty. When they grew old enough to need bigger things, we found ways. Patricia and her husband Greg needed a down payment on their house in 2003, $22,000. And Harold and I wrote the check at this very kitchen table without hesitation. Daniel's medical school debt had grown to a number that made me catch my breath, and we emptied the savings account, all $31,000, because Daniel was going to be a doctor, and we were not going to let interest rates take that from him. Thomas never asked for a large sum. He asked in smaller pieces across 15 years. Tire repairs, security deposits, 1 month's rent when Sandra left him the first time, a plane ticket, a car payment when his engine failed. Each thing small enough to feel like nothing. Added together, when I finally sat down to count, they came to just over $18,000. I am not telling you these numbers because I wanted repayment. I am telling you because what came next requires you to understand the weight of what I gave and the lightness with which it was dismissed. Harold died 8 years ago, on a cold Thursday in February, quietly in his sleep, exactly the way a man who built things with his hands for 30 years deserved to go. I sat with him for a while before I called anyone. I wanted those last minutes to be just ours. Quiet, just the 2 of us, not performing for anyone. The children came for the funeral. Patricia held my hand through the graveside service. Daniel organized the paperwork with an efficiency I understood was his way of grieving, because Daniel has always processed pain by solving something adjacent to it. Thomas stood in the back of the church with his hands in his coat pockets, and I watched him check his phone twice, catch himself, and put it away. That service was the last time all 3 of my children were in the same room with me at the same time. The first Christmas after Harold was gone, I made allowances. They were grieving too. We all were. Patricia called on Christmas morning, briefly. She sounded distracted the way people sound when they are in a kitchen full of noise doing 3 things at once. Daniel sent a text at noon. "Merry Christmas, Mom. Thinking of you." Thomas called 2 days later to say the days had gotten away from him. I made a small dinner, watched a film Harold had loved, and went to bed telling myself this was grief. It was temporary. We would find our way back. The second Christmas, I decorated the full house, the way I always had, because I believed if it looked like Christmas, the children might find their way to it. I cooked the full dinner, glazed ham, sweet potatoes, rolls Harold had always requested. Patricia called on Christmas Eve. The children were sick, she said. They couldn't travel. She was sorry. Daniel mailed a gift card. $25 at a grocery chain I didn't particularly care for, arriving on December 28th. Thomas did not call at all. I called him at 4 p.m. and got his voicemail. I left a cheerful message. I did not hear back. By the third Christmas, I had stopped decorating the whole house. I bought a small artificial tree, 4 feet tall, pre-lit, because the real ones were too heavy to carry in from the car alone. I set it in the corner of the living room and wound around it a string of beads that had been on every tree we ever had as a family. Patricia, I learned later from a mutual neighbor, had spent Christmas in Vermont at Greg's sister's ski cabin. She had not thought to mention this to me. Daniel called on December 26th, cheerful, asking if I'd had a good day. I told him it was quiet. He said that sounded nice. The fourth and fifth years blur together in my memory the way painful years sometimes do. They are the same color, a specific gray, like the light through the kitchen window when there is no sun. I stopped making the full dinner. I ordered a small meal from a restaurant that delivered on Christmas Day. I ate it from the containers at the kitchen table. Fine. The food was fine. I watched the empty street from the window until it was dark, and then I went to bed. What I know now is that I spent those 5 years giving my children the benefit of a doubt so enormous it had become a room I lived inside, sealed off from the truth. I had built a structure out of their potential goodness, and I refused to examine the walls. It was a conversation I overheard at the pharmacy that finally cracked it open. I was in the greeting card aisle on a Saturday in early December of the 6th year, looking for Christmas cards to send to my grandchildren, Daniel's children. Olivia, 9, and Marcus, 7. Received cards from me every holiday without fail, handwritten notes with a $20 bill folded inside. I had found a card with a snowman that Marcus particularly would have liked and was reading the inside of it when I heard my name from the next aisle over. It was Sandra, Thomas's Sandra, who had apparently moved back in with him sometime in the previous year without anyone thinking to tell me. She was on her phone, her voice low, but not low enough. "Eleanor?" she said. A pause, a small laugh. No, Tom never calls her. Nobody really does, honestly. She just rattles around in that big house. I keep telling Tom they need to get her to add them to the deed, just practically speaking. That house has to be worth at least $400,000 in this market, maybe more. And you know, she has no real plan for it. I stood in the greeting card aisle and held the snowman card and listened to the rest. There was not much more, just the continuation of a practical conversation between two people who thought a 71-year-old woman in the next aisle was somewhere else entirely. I put the snowman card back in exactly the right slot. I walked out of the pharmacy without buying anything. I sat in my car in the parking lot for a long time. The engine was off. Small, dry snowflakes landed on the windshield and stayed. I watched them accumulate. And something that had been bending inside me for 6 years, something I had insulated and protected and made excuse after excuse for, broke clean, not in grief, in clarity, cold and final and, strangely, peaceful. The way the sky is clear after a storm has fully passed through. I drove home. I made tea. I sat at the kitchen table. The same table where Harold and I had written the check for Patricia's down payment, where we had signed every important document of our shared life. And I made a decision. I was not going to disappear. I had been disappearing for 6 years, and I was done. Harold used to say that silence only protects you if someone is paying enough attention to notice it. If no one is listening, silence is not dignity. It is erasure. But I also knew I had to be careful. Because what Sandra had said was not simply evidence of indifference. It was a strategy. They were waiting. The house Harold and I had paid off together over 19 careful years was what they were waiting for. And the moment I understood that, I understood I had to move before they did. I needed Margaret. Margaret Osei has lived next door to me on Birchwood Lane for 22 years. She is 73, a retired intensive care nurse who raised 4 children alone after her husband left when the youngest was 3, and she is the sharpest person I know. Not sharp in the brittle sense. Sharp the way a person becomes when her children's well-being depended for years on her reading situations accurately. She watches from her kitchen window, not out of nosiness, out of love. The particular unsentimental love that women of a certain age develop for each other when they have both learned that no one is coming to save you, and that the next best thing is someone who knows exactly where you are. She came that same evening. She had seen my car return and then seen nothing more, and she knew. She knocked and I let her in and I told her everything. The pharmacy, Sandra's voice, the 6 Christmases, the $71,000, all of it. Margaret sat across from me and held her tea and did not say a word until I had finished. She is the only person I have ever known who truly knows how to listen. When I stopped talking, she set her cup down carefully. "Eleanor," she said, "you have been raising your children this entire time. They just don't need you to do it anymore." She paused. "What do you want to do?" she asked. I told her. She listened to all of it without expressing surprise at any of it, which is one of the things I love most about Margaret. "I know an estate attorney," she said. "Barbara Chen. She helped me when my brother challenged my mother's will. She is the kind of attorney who does not waste your time, does not charge for things she does not do, and does not speak to older women as if they need managing." A pause. "Call her Monday." I called her Monday. Barbara Chen's office was on the 3rd floor of a downtown building, with a good elevator and a receptionist who did not look at me as though she was waiting for me to need help with something simple. Barbara herself was 60, small, precise, reading glasses on a chain, with the manner of someone who had heard every variety of human disappointment and had ceased to find any of it surprising. That manner was, in this context, exactly what I needed. I told her everything. She listened without writing anything down, which I found unusual until I realized she was memorizing it. When I finished, she put on her glasses and looked at me directly. "You are a lucid adult with full ownership of your assets," she said. "You are under no legal obligation to leave anything to anyone. Let's start there and build." We met 4 times before Christmas. By the 4th meeting, I had placed the house in an irrevocable trust with the Maple Creek Elementary Education Fund as the primary beneficiary, and my right to live there for the rest of my life fully protected and documented. I had revised my will entirely, removing all 3 children as direct beneficiaries and directing the contents of my accounts to the same fund. I had opened a separate account at a different bank and moved 3 months of living expenses into it. I had changed the beneficiary on my life insurance policy. The one exception was my grandchildren. Olivia and Marcus would receive a college fund administered directly to them, in their names only, not available to or through their parents, going straight to the children when the time came. Those children had done nothing. They still sent me drawings at Easter. I did all of this quietly, in a downtown office on Tuesday mornings, while not one of my children called to ask how I was. Patricia sent a text in early December asking whether I wanted a kitchen appliance for Christmas. I told her the kitchen had everything it needed. She did not respond. The Saturday before Christmas, I baked Harold's cookies, the ones with the red and green sugar crystals that he had loved every single year of our marriage. I made a full batch and put them on the heavy white ceramic plate with the chip on the rim from 1994, when Thomas knocked it off the counter and we decided to keep it anyway. I sat by the kitchen window and watched the snow come down on Birchwood Lane, and I thought about what I was going to do on Christmas night, and I felt something I had not felt in a long time, completely certain. Christmas morning arrived the way the 6th one would, without sound. Coffee. The cardinal at the Birdfeeder Herald had built 20 years ago. The street, still and white. At 9 in the morning, I sent a text to each of my 3 children. "Merry Christmas. I love you." 3 separate messages, each one written out individually. Not one of them responded. I spent the afternoon at Margaret's. Her sweet potato pastries, her warm kitchen, a long conversation about Harold and her late mother, and the particular texture of a life that is quietly good even when it is not easy. I walked home when it was dark. The street was quiet. The windows up and down Birchwood Lane glowed orange through the snow. 7:14 p.m., December 25th, the 6th year. I sat down on the couch next to the little blinking tree. I picked up my phone. I opened the camera. I pressed record. I did not prepare what I would say. I sat with my hands folded in my lap, the way I used to sit when I needed my 4th graders to understand that what was coming was important, and I looked directly into the lens and I spoke. "My name is Eleanor. I am 71 years old, and today is Christmas. I am alone. This is the sixth Christmas in a row that I have spent without a single call, a visit, or a text message from any of my 3 adult children. Their names are Patricia, Daniel, and Thomas. I raised them in this house, in this living room, next to this very tree. I loved them the way you love children you have been waiting for your whole life, without holding anything back. Over the years, I gave them what I could, their educations, their debts, their down payments, their emergencies. I gave them $71,000 and 33 years of my best hours. And today I made a small dinner and sat alone at the table where we all used to sit together, and not one of them thought to send a message. I want to be honest about what I am feeling, because I think honesty is the only thing worth offering anyone at my age. I am not angry. Anger would be easier. What I feel is something quieter. A sadness that has settled into the bones the way cold settles in winter, not sharp, just present. The kind of sadness that comes when you have finally stopped pretending that something lost might still come back. But I am fine. I want you to know that. I am fine because I have learned something at 71 that I wish I had understood earlier. My value is not something other people decide. It was never theirs to give, and it is not theirs to take away. I have lived a good life. I have loved real things. I am still here, and that is not nothing. That is actually quite a lot if you are watching this. And I cannot imagine why you would be, since perhaps 40 people follow this page, and most of them are former students who accepted my request to be polite. But if you are watching, and you know what this feels like, the holiday silence, the phone that doesn't ring, being in a house that used to be full and is now only yours, I am talking to you. You are not invisible. You are not nothing. Someone should be saying that to you today, and since they are not, I am saying it. Merry Christmas. I love you. Whoever you are. 4 minutes and 18 seconds. I watched it once to confirm the audio was clear. Then I posted it to my Facebook page at 7:43 p.m. and went to bed. I slept well. Better than I had in weeks. There is a particular quality to the sleep that comes when you have done something true, something you were always going to do and finally did. The house was in the trust. The will was revised. The video was posted. Whatever came in the morning would come. I closed my eyes without worrying about it. My phone woke me at 6:15. The vibration was insistent enough that I reached for it in the dark, the way you do when something sounds like it needs attending. The screen was covered in notifications. Not dozens. Hundreds. I opened Facebook and saw the view count. 847,000. And I sat up in bed and read it twice. Then a third time. Then I said, out loud to no one, "Goodness." By 7 a.m., it was past 1 million. By the time I had coffee in my hand and was sitting at the kitchen table, the count had passed 2.3 million. The comments were arriving faster than any number I could track. Thousands every minute from places I had never been, names I would never know. Women in Ohio and Georgia and the Philippines and Germany and a town in New Zealand. Young people writing that they were calling their grandmothers right now, immediately, after watching me. Men writing that their own mothers had gone the same way and they were ashamed. Women writing that they were their mother, that they had been alone for years, that they had not known how to say so until they watched me say it. I read as many as I could until my eyes blurred. Then I set the phone down and looked out at the cardinal feeder and thought about Harold, who would have had exactly 4 words to say about all of this. And those 4 words would have been perfect. And I let myself be sad about that for a moment before I let it go. The phone rang at 8:45, a local news station. At 9:02, a television producer from New York. 3 more media calls in the next 40 minutes. I let them all go to voicemail. I knew the difference between things that needed to be decided quickly and things that needed to sit. At 9:17, my phone rang and the name on the screen was Patricia. I watched it ring. 1, 2, 3. On the 4th ring, I answered. Mom. Her voice was tight, controlled, working hard to stay that way. Mom, what did you do? I told the truth, I said. Good morning, a pause. There are journalists calling Greg's work phone, she said, and her voice cracked at the edges. His work phone, Mom. Daniel says people are flooding his practice's website. Thomas. I don't even know what's happening with Thomas. I held the phone loosely. I told the truth, I said again. I sat next to the tree and I told the truth about my life. You named us, she said. I said Patricia, Daniel, and Thomas. Yes, you could have. There were other ways too. Mom, people are saying horrible things about us online. They're leaving reviews on Daniel's medical practice. They found Tom's business page and... Patricia. My voice took on the quality it takes when I need to be very precise. Not unkind, but exact. I did not ask anyone to contact you. I did not ask anyone to be angry on my behalf. I sat alone on Christmas night, the 6th Christmas in a row, and I told the truth about my life. I am not responsible for how the world responds to the truth. A silence that had its own weight. Can we come over? She said finally, and something in her voice had shifted. The control was gone, and what remained was raw and less prepared. You are welcome in my home, I said. You always have been. They came 2 hours later, all 3 of them. I had not managed to have all 3 children in my house at the same time in 8 years, and it took a Christmas video seen by several million people to accomplish it, which is a fact I stored away to feel something about later. Patricia and Greg arrived first. Patricia's face was composed in the particular way that means she had been composing it deliberately in the car. Greg looked at me with an expression I had not seen on his face before, something like humility, which I had not associated with Greg, who was a confident man. They sat at the kitchen table and accepted the tea I poured. Daniel came 20 minutes later, alone, and stood for a moment in the doorway before coming in, the way people stand in doorways when they are unsure of their welcome. Thomas and Sandra arrived last. Thomas's eyes were red at the rims. Sandra sat down beside him and folded her hands in her lap, and I noted that. I had set the table the way I always set it for family. Good cups. Cloth napkins. The ones Harold's mother had embroidered. Harold's cookie plate in the center with the remaining cookies. Whatever this conversation was going to be, I was going to have it with the same care I gave to everything that mattered. Before anyone says anything, I said from my seat at the head of the table, the seat where I had sat for 40 years, I'd like to speak first. I would like to finish before anyone responds. Can you give me that? Patricia opened her mouth. Greg touched her arm. She closed it. Thank you, I said. I told them about the pharmacy. I described exactly where I had been standing and exactly what I had heard. I watched Sandra's face move through 3 stages as I spoke. Surprise, then something that tried to become indignation, then a careful stillness that meant she had decided to wait and see. Then I told them about Barbara Chen and the 4 Tuesday meetings. I told them the house was now in an irrevocable trust with the Maple Creek Elementary Education Fund as the primary beneficiary. I told them about the revised will. I told them about the grandchildren's college account, administered directly to Olivia and Marcus, not through their parents, not accessible to their parents, going straight to the children when the time came. I told them everything had been done legally, with full capacity, and had been in place for 3 weeks before the video was posted. I have not done any of this out of anger, I said when I finished. I want you to believe that, because it is true. I did it because I heard in a pharmacy in December what I actually was to you. Not a mother. The house. You were waiting for the house. The relationship you maintained. The occasional text, the gift card at Christmas, the comfortable distance. That was enough to keep me in place until the house was ready to be collected. I am not willing to be kept in place. Not anymore. The silence that followed was complete enough that I could hear the cardinal at the feeder outside. Thomas was the first one to speak. Not the way I expected. Not in defense. Not with anger. He put his face in his hands. His shoulders began to shake. After a moment, I understood that he was crying, genuinely, the kind of crying that embarrasses a person because it is not performed and cannot be controlled. Mom, he said, just my name. I looked at my youngest child, who had always meant well and never quite arrived, who had borrowed money for tires and not called to say thank you, who had stood in the back of Harold's church with his hands in his pockets. And I felt something in my chest open and close at the same time. Grief and love and fury sharing 1 inch of space inside me, because that sound was real. I know performed emotion. I spent 33 years in rooms full of it. That was not performed. Patricia was not crying. She sat very still, and I knew that stillness. I had known it since she was 11 years old and had been told something she did not want to hear. She was constructing her response behind her eyes. When she spoke, her voice was measured. I want to say I didn't know you were alone every Christmas, she began. You knew, I said. Not harshly, factually. She looked away toward the window, and for a moment I saw in her face the girl she had been before she became the woman she is. The girl who used to bring me wildflowers from the yard in her small fist. "I'm sorry, Mom," she said quietly. "Inadequate, late, real." Daniel had not spoken for the entire conversation. He sat with both hands around his untouched teacup, looking at the table. When he finally spoke, his voice was deliberate. "The $31,000, he said. "Yes," I said. He looked up. He was 53 years old, and in that moment he looked younger and older at the same time. The way people look when they finally let themselves understand something they have been carefully avoiding. "I never thanked you," he said. Many times I thought, I should take her to dinner. I should call her. I should do something that acknowledges what she did. And I never did. "I don't have an explanation that isn't embarrassing." "No," I said. "I was busy every year of my life," he said. "And you were alone every Christmas. And I kept choosing to be busy." He did not look away when he said it. That took something. Sandra shifted in her chair. I kept my gaze on her just long enough to let her know I had not forgotten the pharmacy, and I was not naive, and I was watching. Not with malice, but with the clear-eyed attention of a woman who had spent 6 years giving too many people too much benefit of too much doubt. "I am not asking anything from any of you," I said, addressing all of them. "I am not asking for apologies that don't mean anything or gestures driven by what journalists are writing about you online. What I did with the house and the will is permanent, and I am at peace with it. The only thing I am asking for is honesty. If you want a relationship with me, a real one, not a performance of one, I am here. If you don't, then don't pretend." I have lived long enough to know the difference, and I have run out of patience for pretending I cannot see it. Thomas lifted his face from his hands. "I want to," he said. I've been scared of something I can't even name, and I let it make me absent. "I'm sorry, Mom. I mean it." I looked at him. "I know," I said. "I believe you." I did not make promises that afternoon. I did not forgive everything over one pot of tea. Real things do not work that way, and I am too old to pretend they do. But I held what was genuine in that kitchen. Thomas's red eyes, Daniel's honesty. The girl Patricia almost showed me again for a moment, and I held it with care, the way you hold things that are still fragile. I did not call back the journalists, with one exception. A writer named Joanna, who covered elder isolation and loneliness, reached me through a contact of Margaret's, and she wanted to write not about me specifically, but about the epidemic of it. Older adults living in silence while families reorganize themselves around the assumption that quiet means fine. I gave her an hour. The piece ran in February, and several policy researchers wrote to me afterward, which I found quietly satisfying. The video has now been seen by over 11 million people. I stopped watching the count at some point because the count is not what matters. What matters is the messages. The ones I open at random, 1 or 2 each day, from women in farm towns in Nebraska and apartments in Seoul and coastal cities in Portugal who recognize themselves in a 71-year-old woman sitting alone next to her blinking tree on Christmas night. Those I keep in a folder. I read them when I need to remember why I pressed record. Thomas comes on Sunday afternoons now. Not every Sunday. Some he is not able to, and he texts to say so, which is more than he did for 6 years. He sits in Harold's old chair, and sometimes we talk, and sometimes we watch the bird feeder together in the quiet that does not need filling. It is honest, and it is enough. Daniel drove 3 hours on my birthday in January. We went to dinner, and afterward we sat in the parking lot because neither of us was ready for the evening to end, and he told me things he had not said in decades. About the distance in his marriage, about the loneliness of being a doctor, about how he had learned to manage his emotions so thoroughly that he had nearly managed his way out of having them. I did not solve anything that night, but I understood more than I had, and so did he, and understanding is where real work begins. Patricia and I speak on Wednesdays. Half an hour, sometimes more. 2 stubborn women finding a path back to each other along a road that is narrow and requires care. She is not there yet. Neither am I, entirely. But we are moving. The house on Birchwood Lane is mine for as long as I live. What Harold and I built will one day go toward reading programs for children whose families cannot afford school supplies, and for a woman who spent 33 years keeping peppermints in a jar so every child who came to her felt welcome. There is a rightness in that ending that satisfies something deep. Harold would have laughed at the whole story, actually, and then gotten quiet, and then said something wise in 4 words or fewer. I put up the full decorations this year. Every box came up from the basement. The lights went along the porch, railing the way Harold used to string them, one bulb at a time, checking each one. The wreath went on the door. I stood on the front step in the cold and looked at it in the dark, and it was beautiful. My house. Still mine. Still lit. There is something I want to say to you before I go, because I know this story is not only mine. You have felt this too, or you know someone who has, or you are sitting right now in a house that is quieter than it should be on a day that used to be full. The invisibility. The phone that goes quiet on the days it should be loudest. The sense of being maintained rather than loved. Kept just warm enough to be useful, not warm enough to feel real. That loneliness is one of the best kept secrets of our culture, and it should not be a secret. What I learned, not at the end of this story, but partway through it, on a quiet Tuesday morning in a downtown office, is that you cannot wait for someone else to decide you are worth protecting. You have to do it yourself. You have to act on your own behalf while there is still time to act, and you have to do it without guilt, because protecting yourself is not a betrayal of love. It is love. It is the final form of self-respect. You are not too old for this decision. There is no age at which you become too old to act, to change, to protect yourself, to speak. I pressed record at 71 years old, sitting next to a 4-foot artificial tree in a house full of the echoes of a life I built, and 11 million people heard me. Not because I said something extraordinary, because I said something true. And truth, spoken clearly by someone who has paid the real price to understand it, travels farther than you think. If someone in your life is not treating you the way you deserve to be treated, if the phone goes quiet at Christmas, if you are being maintained instead of loved, if you have been bending for so long that you have forgotten what standing straight feels like, let my story be the permission you did not know you needed. You have that permission. You have always had it. If this story stayed with you, I would love to hear from you in the comments. Tell me, what would you have done in my place? And from where in the world are you listening? I read every message, and you mean more to me than you know. For more stories like this one, like this video, and subscribe. There is so much more waiting for you. With love and respect. Until next time.